With all of the apprehensions and the cancel culture and the filters and the be careful what you say, I thought I would start this video by taking out anything controversial, anything that might be misconstrued or that I'm not qualified to talk about, or that could offend somebody somewhere at some point, in either in this period or in the future on another timeline. So I'm going to remove all of that those questionable words. So let's begin the discussion. At the, when, right, north, huh, why, in, on, the, of, north, right, left, down, at, the, up, right, if, no, when, maybe, it, the, and, of, the, why, right, north, south, down, back, foot, hand, the, and, at, of, it. We will be speaking like that in the near future. I'm just giving you a kind of a what do you call that? One of those preliminary, this is what the future will look like, because we're not allowed to talk about stuff. Everyone gets offended. And then 20 years from now, they'll draw up the video and says, look what he said. He used that word. And in case you're not getting my point, it's all a manipulation. Okay? It's some organization just trying to stir trouble. So, but on to the discussion. Today we're going to talk about implants. Energetic implants. Now, some of you might think, well, gee, he hasn't talked about any extraterrestrial alien stuff or stellans. Stellan culture, that's my thing. Stellan culture. Because it is a culture and they are very advanced. Stellans. Some might think I haven't talked about it for a while and I don't believe in that stuff anymore. Well, I do believe in that stuff. I just don't feel it necessary to talk about it as much anymore. The landscape has completely changed. And my material is still available online in books. That hasn't changed. I haven't deleted all of my alien stuff. Because we're not alone. But not only are we not alone, is that the stellans, they interact with people and they interact with the engineering of people, genetic engineering. There are programs of genetic engineering, genetic modification, such that the genome, the human genome, has been improved by stellans, stellan science, who are, these cultures are very advanced in genetics. We didn't discover DNA until 1953, right? 1953, but our off-planet cousins have been periodically tinkering with our DNA since before 1953. And in the modern era, it was about 1935, 36. And that began sort of a slow process. But even if you go to ancient times, that effort is there because it's a normal effort to ensure the progress and the viability of a planet, because DNA degrades over time. On top of the genetic aspect of our advanced cousins, there is an energetic aspect. And so the Stellan cultures have a very advanced form of energetic medicine, let's call it. It's an energetic science. Because we all know, like, we have a spirit, right? We have a spirit, a soul. We have energy, people believe in an auric field. Your soul is energy, your spirit is energy. And then you have your physical body, molecules. So human science can affect the physical body, right? Stellan science can affect this spirit, the energy body, So why is that important? Like, why would they tinker with the energy body? And it goes back to some of our previous discussions, and you have to follow along some of my previous material to understand things. But we talk about incarnation agreements. So if you just took a spirit and it incarnates into a physical body, and then they grow up, and then they can do whatever they want. But that would defy the whole purpose of life, because you got to learn something. You got to learn something. But we do get people out there who they're aimless and they're not learning anything. But those are issues, right? But the purpose you come here is to learn something. B, you come here to do something. Now, just to clarify, it's not one thing. No one comes here for one thing. I'm here to learn one thing. I'm here to do one thing. And that was I think that was an old idea, right? Maybe it's propagated through movies or through just, ill-informed teachers. You're not here for one thing, to be one thing, to do one thing, or to do a series of similar things. But whatever it is, it's detailed in the agreement, and it's connected to your soul. Like, why are you here? What do you come here to learn? Because souls, in my understanding, souls are very old. So you could be, you could have lived 100 lives, 1,000 lives. You could be 100,000s of years old. So as some entity that's been around 100,000 years on other planets, you will have learned a lot of stuff. So you don't want to come here and do the same thing. Why? You can go on vacation to the same place, 100 times, but after the 10th time it gets boring, and even the kids will say, well, we don't want to go to Disneyland for the 100th time. So it's the same thing. The logic is there, right? The logic is there. You're going to come here, you want to try something different. You don't want to go to the same restaurant every day. That's all detailed in the incarnation agreement. What do you want to learn? What are some of the things you want to learn? What are some of the things you want to experience? Right? What are the conditions? What are the inhibitions? How are we going to hobble? You get kind of hobbled, so you don't have all of your faculties. So that we've talked about. Now, the Stellan scientist has to say, how do we make sure that a person does what they're supposed to do? Because that's what they've agreed to, that's what they want to learn. That's what they want. So we have to help them to do what they want. And we might put some of our wants in there too, right? You might get some unscrupulous scientists who say, well, let's add a little extra chili pepper to the formula. Yeah, that happens. Because that happens. It happens in real life. It happens. Accountants, they take 10% for themselves. You can't control everything. So people start to think, well, everything has to be pure. Well, there should be no mistakes. Everybody should be pure, ethical. No, there are discrepancies. There are people who are unscrupulous. There are scoundrels. There are other agencies that will influence and try to distort things. That, you have to accept that happens. And that can be mitigated to some extent, that could be controlled to some extent, that could be cleaned up to some extent, but it exists. So I guess what I'm saying is you might be screwed up because somebody screwed you up. But maybe that's part of your process now, is to figure out what happened and try to correct it. Maybe you have that ability as an advanced spiritual being, to figure out what happened, what they did, and you can correct it. But that takes effort. So if you say, well, I don't know, everybody's bad, then you're not going to fix it. If you say, well, let's figure it out, and you do the work, and you can go very deep. But to do that kind of work it takes many years, right? And some people in deep therapy or in rehabilitation, they may have things that just aren't working right at a much higher level. And that takes a much more intricate work. And because what happens is, when you try to fix one thing with medicine, and then you try to fix another medicine with another program, and then you try to fix that program with another medicine, and then you go through a bunch of mistakes in life, and then you fix more medicine, you got more program. There's a lot of mistakes. So that becomes a huge problem, because now you mistake to fix another mistake, to fix another mistake, you have to that's a lot of work. But it's still possible. You can squeeze through. So you have this, we've come here for a reason. We're doing things. And if you're young, you're trying to figure out what am I supposed to do? What's my purpose? And so you try a bunch of stuff. But one of the things that can keep you on track is this energy medicine. And the energy medicine is almost like we call it an implant, an energy implant, or a program. You could call it a program. And they can place these implants, I'm using physical, you can place an implant. So it's energy, okay? So it's not physical, but it's the kind of energy that can interact with your spirit. So your spirit has a kind of a substance. We can feel the spirit. You can feel somebody's spirit. So it's that kind of energy. It has a substance to it. It has a frequency to it. And they can place it into your body, right? Into your mental body, into your physical body, into your spirit body. So I call it energy implants. And the energy implant is programmed, to override other parts of your spirit. So for example, let's try to use an example. Let's say you're born and you're supposed to work with horses. But horses to most people are not interesting. They're very exotic, they're expensive. So it's not natural to think I want to work with horses. So we put an implant that says, okay, you love horses. You start to, when you're young, you're drawing horses. You want to ride ponies, right? You buy horse paintings because of the implant. Those implants have colored your vision to see horses because you're supposed to work with horses, right? You can work with horses. So we put an implant. They put an implant that says, okay, this person. Now you see horses. Everything you see horses. You love horses. Oh, I love horses. Always love horses. I've always been drawing horses. There's nothing wrong with horses, right? So you buy a horse, you got your saddle, and maybe you do some competition, and you raise them. But it's all because they put an implant when you were born, in your spirit body. And it can be something else. Let's say someone's incarnated and there's a dark group of stellans, right? Reptilians. And the reptilian, they want more people in the underworld. They want more gang members. So the guy's born, we put an implant. You're going to be a gang member, you're going to get tattoos, take a lot of steroids. You want to hurt people. So the guy, he's like doing a lot of lifting weights and he wants to kill people, right? Always getting trouble, hates the police because that's in the implant, right? You hate the police, you got to kill people, you want to beat people up, you got to commit a crime, you got to belong to a gang. It's all in the program. So then they become a criminal. The reptilian, right? That's the reptilian. So you can have, but you understand that you can have horses or you can have gangsters and everything in between. So that can highly influence your life, that type of implant. But the other type of implant is to say, let's say you're a normal person, but you believe we put an implant, it's a colloquial, okay? I'm not doing it. It's a colloquial. They put an implant that says, you believe everything in a novel, you believe. So when you're young, you read voraciously, and novels, you love novels, and they influenced your life, and they influence how you live your life and what you think and how you believe. Because the implant is saying novels, right? Novel holds the truth. That's the kind of the implant. The novel tells you everything you need to know. So you're reading novels. That's your source. In another person, we could say, put an implant, okay, you got to go to church. Bible, scripture, anything religious. Whatever the scripture, the biblical writings, that is true. That's the implant. So you become spiritual, you become a priest, you start teaching whatever the religion is, and you pray, right? So you become, because of that implant. So you can have, now understand, you can have a normal life, you can have a job, you can have a family, you have a fascination with horses, or you have a fascination with novels, or you like to commit crimes, right? So it's all of these things can be simultaneous. I think that's hard for people to understand, because people tend to think, the people I've worked with tend to think it's one thing overrides. No, you could be a normal person, but with little quirks, little prejudices, little preferences and fetishes. We could put a fetish, for pornography as a way to take you off the path. We, not me, they can say, well, that person's excelling too much. Let's put a little pornography. Now, let's put a little addiction. This can be programmed. You have an addiction, right? So a lot of that now starts to shape life, distort a life, depending on what it is. But what happens over time, because everything it's not permanent. It's not permanent. The implants are not permanent. At some point, when the implant has served its purpose, it dissolves. So, for the first 20 years of your life, you had a fascination with horses. The implant dissolves. Age 21, you think back, because when you get older, you think back. Gee, when I was about 21, I lost all interest in horses, right? And they say, well, what about before? Well, up until 20, I loved horses. I got paintings of horses. I was riding horses. We owned several horses. I made my father spend hundreds of thousands of his dollars to buy me horses and a ranch. And then at 21, I just said, nah. And that kind of discussion gives you an insight into whether maybe an implant just finished, right? It finished, it served its purpose. So, and some implants might last until you're 50. When you're 50 years old, all of a sudden, you realize, gee, I have been chasing this, the woman says, I've been chasing this type of man. He's very abusive. And I've become like a caregiver, and I've never been happy. And it just goes away. Oh, I'm not going to do that anymore. And that could be an implant too. That could have been an implant for you to continue to experience this with these emotionally handicapped men, because maybe they needed help. Maybe you needed to experience that. Again, I'm not saying what it is. I'm trying to provide examples so that we can have some kind of understanding of the geography. But I'm not judging it. There's no good or bad, because these are implants and they're there for you. But I think it's important to realize because you might not know you have an implant. So but when it's gone, when it kind of dissolves or it fizzles out. And I'm not going to get into it today, but they're like more physical implants. Not metal, but they're like a material that dissolves, that they also can put into people, and that could keep you on a path, right? To do certain things, to write certain books, or to study certain subjects, right? And sometimes an implant can be placed and is dormant until a certain age, when it activates. And the implant is like a timer, right? So let's say it activates at age 24 and it lasts 15 years. So then you could say from 24 to 15 is what, 39. So at 39, it dissolves. And now that impetus in your life kind of dissolves and you lose interest. Sometimes you go through a period of depression, right? We could put an implant at age 19 to say, okay, you start acting. 19, acting. And at 31, it ends. And at 31, you realize, I want to do something different. But then you're in a situation where I've spent, 12 years of my life. All my friends are actors or directors, and I don't want to act anymore. So what do? Right? Or you've been on a successful show, or you've had success. You've been a success, and now you lost that impetus. Sometimes that loss of impetus that can be that those implants are gone because you've experienced what you came to experience, and that implant helped you to stay motivated, to stay on track, right? It's for you, it's serving you. The question is, when the implant dissolves, do you continue the same thing? And that's a hard question because that's economics, and that's the level of depression. Sometimes you got depression because you're like, yeah, I don't have that same interest anymore. And so what do, right? I'm still going to do it because I've already been doing it. I'm going to stay married to the guy, even though he's a moron. Just because we've been married 12 years, I can do it. Or is that an opportunity to say, I've fulfilled my obligation spiritually to myself and to the higher agreement. Now do I fulfill a new agreement to myself? Do I have freedom? Do I have that freedom now? Have I earned a little reprieve? And I can try new things. And they might implant something else later. You might, right? Somebody quits, they retire 5 or 6 years, and then they take off again. So you don't know that. I don't know that. But I think when you get older, and you're analyzing, right? You're doing a life review, you're writing a memoir, you're seeing kind of like, oh, at 16, I had an interest in that. And that went on, it was really intense, and this type of man, this type of career, and I went to school, this type of school, I had to get in, I did this, and I did that, and I got in, and I got my degree, and I graduated, and nobody thought I could do it, nobody believed in me, right? What's driving that, right? And then you come out, and then this happened. And then when I got older, at 35, I lost interest. I went through depression, and now I'm doing this, right? So you can see, if you look at those big nodal points, that could indicate, I'm not saying it does, and it's not true for everyone, but it could indicate that there was some kind of this energetic implant. Right? That when you're 48, I don't see things the same anymore. I don't worship that thing the same anymore. I don't care about that. I used to always care about that. I used to always go here for my information. I used to always have this ritual, and now I don't anymore. And that can serve you because it can suggest everything serves us, or this is a disservice. It depends on your interpretation. But it can suggest that you don't need that anymore. You don't need that crutch. Or it served its purpose, and now you've served your purpose because you've had that lead your life for many years. like if you're an actor, you always action movie, action movie, action movie. I got to make action movie, action. But then when you're 50, you're like, I don't think I have to prove myself as an action star anymore. I'm going to do comedy. It doesn't matter anymore. Or I'm not going to be, I don't want to fix cars anymore. I don't want to be a mechanic anymore. I want to be fireman. So it serves you because once the implant is there for that higher purpose. So when there's a demonstrable change in your perspective, in your view, right? In your view of reality, in your belief system, then it could say that you are now free, or you're capable of making your own decision. You've served the purpose. You've served the purpose, right? You've done all the things you had to do. Spiritually, right? You've done all the things you had to do. Now, you can do what you want. So, you got a lot more latitude. But now you're kind of in a situation, usually because you're older. You're 35 and you've done all those things. You think, oh, well, that's a waste. And that's where the depression comes in. I wasted. I could have done this. I could have done that. And that's kind of because we don't have this kind of education, right? How many people talk about energy implants? So when the implant dissolves or fades and you're going through a depression, there's a lot of, what do you call it? I call it amelioration, mitigation. What do you call it? You have to justify that what you did made sense. And it may not have made sense. And then you have to figure out how to move forward. Right? You have to you have to ameliorate. I use the word ameliorate. You kind of have to emerge, fix that. But just, the past, what the people say, the past doesn't equal the future. You don't have to do what you always did. And you when you're younger, you'll usually when you're younger, you'll still try to hang on to stuff. When you're older, you're like, okay, I don't need it anymore, right? After 45, you're like, I don't need it anymore. But when you're 30, you're like, oh, I can still do it. So there's a lot going on, right? Because there's your mind. I'm not going to give up. I've invested all this time into that. But there's this other aspect, which I'm trying to talk about, is this energy, spiritual, this kind of a spiritual agreement that you had to do that for a higher purpose, a higher spiritual purpose, which you may or may not understand, right? But you also have your physical life. So these things are going on at the same time as everything else. And it's not going to override your life, but it could color. It colors your vision. It colors your reality, right? And if you buy into it too much, then you become obsessed. You start to believe it. If you kind of just let it play out, your life is a little more balanced. And then when it goes away, you're like, okay, I don't have those colored glasses anymore. I see things different. I don't need to drink 6 bottles of whiskey every 3 days to feel happy. I can just feel happy. It's just a feeling. Energy implants, they're very advanced. They are in use. Not everybody has them. Okay, not everybody has them, or not everybody has to the extent of everybody else, but they do play their part here and there, and you can't really get rid of them because they're serving you. So you kind of have to, if you understand it, you play it out and you say, I got to do this for 4 or 5 or 6 years. I got to do this for 7 years, and then you can feel the shift and you say, okay, I think we can move on. You can feel you can feel it, right? That's okay. It's time to move on. And then sometimes they'll put another implant in, and they're like, oh shoot, there's more. They want more. You get that too, right? It goes out, and you're like, I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna move forward. I'm gonna be better. And then it's like, put it back on, and it looks like you got mental problems, but there could be other things going on. So, something to think about. Don't overthink it. It's there to serve you. Even though sometimes it can be hardship, it's not easy. It's for some reason it's there. I don't know the reason. I have my own issues. I have my own problems. But you can figure it out. You can ask people to help you figure out. There are people who can help you figure it out. Not many people understand energy implants, but they are there, and they've been there for a long time, thousands of years, and they're there in such a way that you don't know they're there. Is it your belief or is it something else? We don't know. You can't prove it. There's no way to prove it. The only way I think you can really understand it is when you look back. You look back and you say, okay, yeah, there was a big shift when I was 25 to 27. And that could inform you. But when you're 24, you can't see the forest through the trees, right? And that's the whole. You're not supposed to see the forest through the trees, because then you would interrupt. You would interrupt with the whole thing. So it's all there. It's all there. These things are going on. They're serving you. So you ride the wave. You make things happen. Do your best, but be ready when things change. Then you realize, okay, we can change. We can move, shift, move. And if it comes back, then you go, okay, well, there's some unfinished business. Let's see what we can do. It's, life. That's life.